Hello and welcome to the audio recording of the book Tarona's Ghostly Encounters. These are accounts of real situations which occurred while Tarona was working as a paranormal investigator. So hold on to your seats.
Chapter 2. When a ghost is not a ghost. Terrible goings on at a priory. 17th century witch finders. Peaceful energy at a monastery. Everyone at some time or another has walked into a building and felt ill at ease. Maybe it felt unwelcoming or inhospitable, or perhaps there was something else that was wrong, something you could just not put your finger on. Places like this feel creepy, even though we don't always know why. There are many cases of land that seems to be suffering, or more to the point, is diseased. Anyone living on such land can start to become ill or even become affected by the stress coming from the land itself. The world's bloody history seems to have created many haunted battlefields, buildings and sites. Strong thought forms can also attach themselves to buildings or land. Traumatic events generate intense emotions within a person, and somehow their thoughts and feelings become imprinted on the building or upon the land. These thought forms last long after a person's death and from time to time reenact, so that their ghost appears. This is similar to playing a film on a video recorder. Gracedale Priory, Thringston, is one of those places. For many years I had been drawn to the ruins of this ancient priory, so when I got the opportunity to do an investigation on the site, I jumped at the chance. It was a beautiful hot summer's day, and the only interruption to the stillness came from the occasional passing traffic on a nearby road. As I walked by a herd of cows before making my way over to the ruins, an uneasy feeling overtook me. Soon scenes from centuries past were played out in front of me, like a movie being projected onto a screen. The ghostly presence of a woman stood over by the ruins. She appeared to be a nun, dressed in a long, coarse, light gown. This spirit was unrested and uneasy and just stood silently staring ahead. Far too many bad things had happened on this land, and to confirm my feelings, the Earth's invisible video recorder started rolling. Rape, murder, plague, hopelessness all came to the surface, and now that I had turned into the Earth's frequencies, the picture would not stop. Standing next to the wire fencing, looking over to the ruins, I witnessed hideous events from centuries past being played back before my eyes. More spirit people seemed to fill this land, and before too long, scenes of fleeing nuns trying to run in vain from the men chasing them continued. As they were dressed in robes, it is possible these men could have been monks. The white sisters looked on, unmoved by the nuns' plight. Soon the picture changed, and there were nuns with swollen stomachs, pregnant nuns about to give birth. Underground tunnels beneath the ruins were shown to me. Many dead nuns lay in these tunnels, some pregnant, some with newborn babies, and some with dark purple-looking faces. My immediate reaction was, there had been plague here, maybe even the Black Death. Grace Dew, at that time in history, was an horrendous place. Why was the White Sister still silently watching? Could the legend of treasure buried in these grounds be true? If this was so, could this be why the White Nun is still silently watching? The recording stopped playing and the once uninterested cow started walking over towards me. Strange indeed, had they too been watching this action replay? It was a classic ghostly recording, no spirits, just earth energy from centuries past. People have reported seeing a white lady in these ruins. She walks over to the road before disappearing. Plague in the Middle Ages was a pandemic proportion and it occurred in three forms: bubonic, pneumonic and septicemic. Bubonic plague is best known for its appearance of boils and enlarged inflamed lymph nodes in the groin, under the armpit or on the neck. The plague is transmitted by a bite from numerous insects that are normally parasites on rodents. The favourites are fleas on the brown rat. Pneumonic plague, so called because the lungs are affected, was often transmitted by droplets sprayed from the lungs and mouths of infected persons. It was possible for this to spread to other parts of the body, resulting in septicemic plague. This infected the blood and can also be contracted through contaminated food, hands or objects. Grace Dew Priory was founded in 1240 for Augustine Canoness by Lady Rosia de Verdum, whose tomb lies in a nearby Belton church. Legend tells that at the time of the dissolution of the monasteries, the last canoness hid valuable relics before attempting to flee. She was stopped by the king's men and supposedly killed for failing to reveal the hidden place. There have been many reports over the years of sightings. One such report was from a policeman who parked nearby and saw the figure of a hooded monk on the rear seat of his patrol car. An 80-year-old woman claimed to have seen several ghosts while passing the ruins when she was a child. From all the various paranormal investigations I've done on ghosts, it would appear that half of the amount of reported hauntings are no more than earthly recordings, not as romantic as a long-lost soul roaming the earth, but nevertheless, if we are to get the truth about ghosts, then we must be prepared to look at them in a sensible manner and leave fear and superstition behind. Just think how frightening we would be to the caveman if we came back in time. Would not he think we were either demons or gods? Another recording came to my attention when a woman, now resident in Leicestershire, came to me with an incredible story that involved a curse upon a certain member of the aristocracy's land. The woman, who does not wish to be named because of her position in society, asked me if it was possible for someone to bring a curse with them from a previous house. A curse is a concentration of negative or destructive energy which is deliberately formed and directed upon a person, place or things. It was certainly not the normal kind of haunting I had dealt with. Arrangements were made for me to view the woman's previous residence. The large sprawling mansion would appear to an outsider to look like a palace. However, the house and grounds carry such negative energy, it's amazing that anyone would want to live there. To say the land was stressed is an understatement, and it therefore came as no surprise to learn that living in this place was the kiss of death to the happiest and longest of marriages. As I moved near to the stable block, the silent video was triggered off, and the past started to be played back to me. A young red-haired boy who looked to be no more than 14 years of age was being dragged out from the stables by two burly figures. Once outside, he was met by a group of men, some dressed like peasants, others dressed as churchmen, together with the very impressive figure of a slim, dark-bearded man dressed in a purple robe. Next, the scene changed to the frightened young man begging these men to let him go because he was innocent. His pleas fell on deaf ears. The mob, drunk with religious rage, would not listen to the boy. They were pointing to what looked to be a slight birthmark on his face. The purple-robed man was most definitely the ringleader and instructed the others to place a noose around the boy's neck and hang him there and then. Thankfully, I was not forced to watch the boy's execution. Instead, other sights played on for me. Many had died on this land, all accused of being witches. These people had no chance of being freed by the bearded clergyman. Much bloodshed followed, with many losing their lives in these grounds. All were falsely accused of witchcraft and devil worshipping. The only good that came out of this investigation was finding out why the house and land were so unlucky. It was not my client who was cursed, but the very earth the house stood on. These events and others like them have left certain sites tormented by the deaths of innocent victims. The witch hunt mania obsessed Europe from about 1050 to the end of the 17th century. Families were encouraged to form against each other, children against parents, husbands against wives, neighbours against each other. Witnesses were paid to testify. Torture was inflicted to force confessions, and the inquisitors did not hesitate to betray the promise they made to pardon to those confessing they were guilty. Professional witch finders arose to collect charges and then testify that the accused were witches. Each conviction brought a large fee. Most common testing involved pricking needles into the accused to see if they bled. If you had been unfortunate enough to have had a birthmark on your body, then it was believed you were in league with the devil. Any unfortunate person having an additional breast or a hair lip was thought to be carrying the mark of Satan. One of the most famous tests involved throwing victims into a pool of water. If the victims sank, then they were considered to be innocent. If they could swim or able to keep afloat, they would be guilty. During the Middle Ages, it was widely believed that the devil and his work, demons, imps, incubi and succubi, were real and had power in the world. It was also believed that people could have physical relations with them, and that contracts could be drawn up between people and the demons. Witches in the Middle Ages were thought to be servants of the devil. It was believed that in return for signing contracts with the demons, witches were given certain powers, and for being able to cure illness to transferring sickness from one person onto another. Storms and rains and even droughts were all blamed upon these so-called devil's disciples. It was said they were responsible for everything from the failure of crops to sterility in men and women. One of the biggest misconceptions was that Witches could become invisible and fly, sometimes with the help of a broom or by using special potions and ointments. Supposedly, they had the ability to transform themselves and others into animals, particularly wolves and cats. Orange or tabby cats were also believed to be favoured by witches, and much cruelty has been and still is inflicted upon these innocent creatures because of silly superstitions put out by the witch finders in the Middle Ages. The belief in magical practices through spirits and demons was universal in ancient times. Egyptian records tell of soothsayers and conjurers using their powers from God or the devil. The Egyptians believed that Moses was a practitioner of witchcraft because he followed an alien god. In the early times, the Christian church was lenient towards witchcraft. People who were proven to practice it were required only to do a penance. Clergymen, still struggling to consolidate the church's power, recognized that all-out conflict with the numerous devotees of the old religion would be disastrous. Not only did they tolerate the old religion, but according to records they frequently participated. Many churches are now built on ancient pagan grounds, making the foundations vibrationally charged. Worth noting is that stones used to build houses can be energetically charged also. For example, if someone was murdered, it is possible for the stones or bricks in the building to carry these very vibrations of distress and terror the victim suffered. This means that anyone who is sensitive would be able to pick up the energy in the vicinity. Animals are incredibly perceptive, and many households have pets who see what the other occupants just sense or feel. Cats, dogs and birds, for example, possess keen psychic senses. They often notice the approach of people or spirits long before our senses do. No place is exempt from ghostly recordings. Mount St Bernard's Abbey near Whitwick holds very strong ghostly recordings. There is a certain spot in the Abbey ground that has a very depressed and even suicidal feeling attached to it. My intuition tells me that someone either died suddenly or took their own life there. The monastery grounds hold a lovely peaceful energy apart from this certain spot. The best way to describe it would be to say it carries a vibration of sadness and the feeling of someone having to leave but not wanting to. Several people have reported seeing the ghost of a young man near the Abbey wall. There are many tales, including the one of a brother going to investigate why the water pump at the well was not working. He was found dead later on the steps. There is also a story connected to a brother who died only days before he was due to be ordained. The abbot, unable to notify the dead man's relatives, who were travelling a great distance to attend his ordination at St Bernard's, was left to greet them with the sad news of his passing. Instead of seeing their relative ordained, they attended his funeral. This would explain why the spot holds such intense sadness. Mount St Bernard's Abbey is located in Charnwood Forest and was founded in 1835. It has the distinction of having been the first Roman Catholic abbey to be founded in this country. After the Reformation, distinguished visitors to the abbey have included Gladstone, Wordsworth, Florence Nightingale and Charles Dickens. The origins of the white monks go back to 1098, and they first came to Leicestershire in 1133 when they went to Garrington Abbey near Loughborough. Loughborough University also holds on to several recordings. Several years ago, I was asked by a young female student to investigate a certain block of flats. As I drove along the dual carriageway, the tower block came into view. It was a tall, grey building, round in shape, which overshadowed the other buildings on the campus. The young woman went on to tell me that several of her friends were frightened in this building and wanted to know if this certain block was haunted or jinxed. Thankfully, it turned out to be neither. All that I could pick up was a heavy atmosphere similar to the vibration in a library or other places of learning. Everything carries a vibration: plants, animals, furniture, and people's arguments. It is only deceased people who can haunt a building, but the living also. There are a couple of incidents that spring to mind, both quite amusing. While tracking down a ghost in a very old building in Leicester, I had tuned into the room's energy field and could see a large green leather armchair. When I told the manager what I had seen, he eyed me with suspicion. "Oh yes," he interrupted, "the one you are talking about was stolen a couple of months ago." Assuring him I had nothing to do with the missing chair, I continued my investigation and picked up a connection with germ warfare. This was checked out, and it was found that the building had been used during the war for tropical virus testing. A similar occurrence happened while visiting an old public house. Much to everyone's unease, on entering the living quarters of the landlord's family, there was a strong vibration of arguments and violence. Totally unaware of the matrimonial state of the present occupants, I went into graphic details about a cheating husband and his relationship with his partner. It wasn't until afterwards that an embarrassed member of staff informed me that I'd been picking up on the present landlord and landlady. Oops. Unfortunately, the truth is not always welcome, but it does go to prove we all leave our mark on the atmosphere in the same way that land, which has experienced pain and suffering, can do nothing other but carry that vibration.